Okie doke, and perhaps other people will be joining in as we go, but I was going to update you with some news. Solar Power International, which is the big conference that's held each year, except apparently doesn't happen anymore because last year it was canceled due to COVID. This year it's scheduled to be September 20th and 23rd through 23rd in New Orleans. And New Orleans is without power, so they have just canceled the conference again this year. So Solar Power International is not doing very well these last couple of years.
Nope.
So then Illinois, Bob, the Renewable Energy Bill, Senate Bill 18, just passed. It's going on to the House. It's kind of interesting. All of the articles I saw on this said, oh, this is going to make Illinois an energy leader, in the country. They weren't real keen on the details. I had to do a lot of digging to find out what exactly was in this bill. And I came away from my digging relatively skeptical and jaundiced, sort of like Don down there in Kentucky. I'm feeling a certain bias towards governmental action, but they have they put in a 50% renewable energy portfolio mandate by 2040, and that escalates to 100% by 2050. So that seems pretty aggressive, that second one for sure. They're arguing that they will put in a lot of financial incentives to make this happen, but they didn't say exactly what those were. But the part that got me a bit jaundiced is it also included $700 million to support 4 nuclear power plants in Illinois. It authorized rate increases for the public utilities, and then also said they would be instituting some retraining programs for fossil fuel workers. So that always makes me a little skeptical when they talk about these retraining, because we see that a lot around here where they say, oh, we're going to close a coal mine, so let's make everybody a solar installer. And it just doesn't work that way. The guys who do coal mining are not the guys who want to go out and become solar installers. They're, probably going to do some other kind of job, like, I don't know, drive forklifts or drive trucks or, become chartered accountants or whatever. But just because you worked in one field of energy does not necessarily mean those skills or those inclinations transfer into another energy field. But government loves to just sort of say, let's move you from a coal miner to a computer programmer. It's like, no, that's not how that works, but anyway, we'll see where that is. But yeah, Bob.
Yeah, I'd like to jump in here. First of all, because of the pension programs, which the legislative in Illinois is part of, which I had a friend who was a part of that. He was paying $86,000 a year as a teacher. And when he retired, it only went up to $160,000 a year off of the pension program.
Sounds like my pension, right?
And so that has literally, like Wisconsin, bankrupt Illinois. So when you start to see legislation, you're not going to see any monies coming out of them. Fine, we'll let people come in here and put nuclear energy in. That's their money. We had to push Edison up because we want more bribes from them to come back on that. But all the monies on the REX program and everything came from and was from Edison, and it was run by a third party because Illinois couldn't run anything if they wanted to.
Well, it sounds like your bribes for nuclear, you guys are just copying Ohio. So try and get original here. We've got the market on that. So all right. So I think it sounds like at least the three of us are fairly skeptical about this particular piece of legislation. I'm throwing Don in there just out of habit,
But now that brings my original point back into play. So Tesla leading the way who when they go out and do sales to my customers, they tell them that we will carry the RECs. In other words, you get a check coming for $10,500 on a 10 kilowatt system. We'll pay that up front, take it off the price, and we'll carry that. And so, but they have to do a power of attorney and turn the monies over to Tesla and all of that sort of stuff, except for one thing. They did that. There's a waiting list, huge waiting list, billions of people in Illinois, a huge waiting list to get the RECs program going, and it's not going to go. And here, followers of them, my competitors, have fronted money for the RECs program, and when it doesn't come through, and it looks like it's not going to come through, guess what? There's going to be a lot of businesses going out of businesses because they don't want to. The banks are really carrying, the financial institutions are carrying that extra money on there. And so there's going to be a big hit. I talked to an owner of another company and he's scared and he's already ready to go out of business.
Are you saying that, I know Illinois had sort of a prepayment on the RECs where you could get a check back for a period. Are you saying now that the customers are paying that?
I'm saying is under normal conditions, the guys who I work with, 9 to 10 months before you get your check, after a lot of paperwork.
Yeah.
But Tesla, with their financial deep pockets, say, listen, if you come with us, we will be glad to give you that immediately. It has nothing to do with the RECs program or anything else. And they apply for the RECs program and they get their money in 9 months to 10 months.
Okay, but what happens if the state doesn't come through? Do these customers then have to throw it back at Tesla?
That's right. I mean, they already have a contract with Tesla and stuff like that. They went under contract with these installs, and the people who are left holding the bag is the financial institutions backing them up. The smaller companies who follow Tesla on this, they're out of business. I mean, they can't come up with the amount of money that they said that was going to happen on the RECs program. There's only 5 other states, right? There's 6 other states that's doing RECs.
Yeah, it's down to just a few. I know Ohio, Pennsylvania, Illinois, what is it? Massachusetts, Washington, DC. There might be one other in there like Maryland or something, but those are the only ones that have active RECs programs.
And I see a big issue coming up on net zeroing on a lot of energy companies want to get out of that.
Yeah. Well, the REC program in Ohio is not very substantial. They pay like $10 a REC or something. But I was just doing an assessment for a company down in Athens, and I found it quite interesting with the current tax benefits. For this particular company, they needed a 100 kW system and estimating it at about $2 a watt. So it's going to be around $200,000 for them to install it. But by the time all the incentives, the main 3 being the federal tax credit of 26%, there's a 25% REAP grant that they can receive from the Department of Agriculture as a agricultural business, and then the accelerated depreciation on their taxes. So if all the incentives were applied, their out of pocket was only going to be $49,000 for this $200,000 system, which was pretty amazing because the payback on it was 3.5 years. So this is one of those reasons why a lot of these companies are just jumping into it, because I mean, why wouldn't you if you had the cash? But obviously you got to be pretty flush because most of these are tax benefits, not grants. So you have to be a profitable business, paying substantial income tax in order to benefit from that.
Jay,
yeah.
They might want to play with the placed in service date too, because if the rates go up next year like we're expecting, the rate's 21% federal now. If they wait until next year, assuming nothing else changes, there's no indication that the credit's going to change. They'll get a bigger benefit for their bucks if they wait till January 1 to put it in service versus
Yeah,
December 31st.
that's a good point. I hadn't thought about that because most people are saying I need to get this thing rushed through by December 31st because I want the benefit this tax year.
I understand, but that's a couple, 3 or 4, at least 3 or 4 percentage points. They think it'll go up to 25.
Sure.
So,
Yep. Yeah, that REAP program, if you're not familiar with it, it doesn't just mean agricultural businesses, even though that's who it's targeted for. It's any business that deals with agriculture or is in a city less than 50,000 people. So it's for rural and agricultural businesses.
okay.
And so REAP has it, it's a 25% grant or a 75% low interest loan, but you must have 25% of your own money in. So you can't get it 100% financed through them, but you could get it up to 75%. Then we were also looking with this particular business, since it was located in the city of Athens, and they have a PACE program in place where they could assess on their property taxes. So the city would actually finance the remaining cost and then bill them back through their tax assessment. So it's referred to as Property Assessed Clean Energy, the PACE program. And the reason that was attractive in this particular instance is the company, it was a grocery store, they didn't own the building. So they're concerned about investing that much money into a property that they don't own, but the payback is so short term that it's very attractive to them, but they can just say, all right, well, we'll finance it through the city. And then as long as the owner of the building is in on this, it will be paid by the tenant of the building, whoever that will be over the next 10 years or 15 years or whatever.
And as a grocery store, I'm just curious, they make enough money to absorb all the credits and the accelerated depreciation?
Yeah, it's one of
They use
those,
very thin.
it's like it's sort of like a Whole Foods kind of quiche specialty thing where
Athens University high profit margin.
yes. In
Jungle
fact,
Gym types.
when I was doing the assessment, my wife asked me to go in and buy her something cold to drink. And I came out and I said, let's stop at a grocery store or something because, all they have is $4 carrot juice and stuff like that. So I was, I don't like spending $9 for a loaf of bread, but their margins were quite good.
It's artesian bread,
Yeah. Yeah, Bob.
I have a completely different subject.
Uh-huh.
In selling solar to anybody in the United States, I came across this. I'm sure I'm not the first person who thought of this, but to look at the solar install as a firm investment. You have, with ROIs, first of all, you have the monies you save on your electric bill. Second, you have the increased value that you put to the property. So I need an accountant to come up with what the average, because over the years that I've looked at investments, it all comes down to if you're doing 6% or better, you're doing pretty good in the market, whether you're in homes or whatever, for the long term. So I want to show them that not only do that they can invest upon that, that when they sell their home, they can charge monies because of the returns on the electric bill and stuff like that.
Yeah,
So
I've seen a lot of contradictory data on that because some articles will say, yes, that adding solar to your home increases the value and it's a good thing. Others will say there doesn't seem to be a market recognition of the added value of solar. So it's a little bit like swimming pools, I think. Some people view that as a liability, others view it as an asset, depending on the customer. So,
But if I spend $20,000 on a 6.5 kilowatt system, and I'm saving electric bills, and after 5 years I sell the house, I'm going to say, listen, I put this money up on the system. It's an asset, and it's an investment that has a return. And what I figure is on the future electric bills, blah, 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 you're going to save this much money. I want a piece of that action, you know, I want to. And so that
But you got a
reinforces.
bunch of your money up front, didn't you? That a lot of this is the tax credit, which they're not going to get.
So that equals into the sort of the cost of the system is where you start, which
Right.
is the principal. And then at that point, if you look at 1 year, you got maybe a negative and a negative, but if you look at a
Mhm.
break even of 10.5 years, and then after that, you have another 15 years of gaining money.
Mhm.
I think that it's a great sell to say to people, don't look at it as putting a solar system up. Don't look at, and I'll tell you right now, I've been told 3 ways across the middle by my competitors, do not mention global warming because you turn off half your
Oh,
customers
yeah.
in a second. But if I say, listen, I'm selling an investment here, that you're going to get money back that is way beyond 6% of your money, and I need to present that.
mhm.
I think logically what you're saying makes sense, but I would be, from what I've seen and talked to people, I'd be surprised that they're going to give you that much value for it. They just, it's not familiar enough yet. Maybe like in California where everybody's putting them on.
I think it's going to be dependent on the customer for sure. One thing on a similar note there, Bob, is I've seen some discussion of trying to educate banks in qualifying people for mortgages, in that if solar is on the facility, that's a cost that is no longer part of their future, liability. So you could say, all right, if it's saving me $150 a month on my electric bill, that's $150 I could be putting towards a mortgage. So I should qualify for a higher mortgage than otherwise. So it's something to say about the customer, because if you look at the total cost of running a household, now the solar asset is offsetting some other costs that exist in a normal situation, So how do you monetize that as far as loan qualification? So that's something to consider. Although my experience with real estate is it's all kind of just plucking numbers out of the air anyway. So who knows? It's like, I think it's worth 100,000. No, 120. It's like, well, how much of that is solar? How much is whatever? So.
But if you bring into the equation, you're not paying electric bills that you would have paid on this. You have an actual return on investment.
Yeah.
Just as good as cash.
Yeah, I think it's an asset. I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you. But I think that's an individual, how well you're going to be with that argument is going to be on the individual you're presenting it to, So some people will look at it as I don't care, and others will go, yeah, that's the difference. That's the difference between me buying that house and not buying that house.
Well, the definition of sales, and I've been in sales for a long time, is you start with a no, and then you turn it into a yes.
Yeah.
And this is a great tool to do that.
Sure. No, I agree.
So if any accountant wants to give me information on how to look at that, I would appreciate it.
Okay, well, Don's sitting there as an accountant. He can tell you, speaking of saying no, isn't that where accountants always come from? Say, no, you can't do that.
You can't afford it. Yeah. It's not my fault you can't afford it.
So,
Don,
all right.
Don, if you can give me your email to Jay or something, I'd appreciate it.
I'd be happy to. Yeah, that's fine.
All right.
Okay.
I mean, I can show you. It's pretty straightforward. You just do a net present value calc is what you just try and sell them on.
Oh, well, then forget it then. I don't know what you're talking about.
But I'll send you the spread. I'll send you a spreadsheet and an example. We can talk through it. That's fine. Yeah.
It's always fun when accountants talk dirty, so. All right. The last news item. Yeah, Bob.
So I may have to leave in the middle. So just
okay. The last news item I had here was, I just found it interesting up in the Finger Lakes area of New York. They're coming out with a community solar project, but for that region, they're actually having a opt-out process. So it's the first one, apparently, according to this article, in the country where they say, this utility is creating a community solar project, and you are enrolled in it unless you opt out, as opposed to opting in. So that's interesting that they're moving their utility to an ownership model under which their customers will own the assets unless they choose to opt out, at which they get, the more traditional billing process. And of course, the selling point there is that the cost with community solar is going to right off the bat be 10% less. And hopefully we'll keep going down from there. But I think we're going to see a lot more, as Bob's mentioning there brings up. A lot of this is about financing. A lot of it is about structuring deals, especially when you get to the higher end situation. So the more of these kind of things we see where they make it easier for people to buy, easier for them to save their money, I think that's going to be interesting to see that evolve.
Jay, is that managed by the utility or by the subdivision developer?
I don't know. They said it was, I couldn't tell if it was like a co-op, like a regional co-op, or if it was maybe it's a utility amalgamation type thing, like a countywide. They just called it something like the Finger Lakes Development District or something like that. So it was kind of unclear to me, but it would have to be either a municipal or governmental structure or a utility, one or the other. I don't see that there's another option.
That's what I was curious about. Is this like a new subdivision they're putting in? They're saying everybody in this development?
No, it's an existing region.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I think it had something to do with when they do the utility aggregation. So normally, for instance, I know Athens County just went through this where they were aggregating, doing sort of a bulk purchasing agreement, but you had to opt into the aggregation to get your renewables, buy your power through the renewables. This is a different thing where they're saying you're in, now you got to opt out.
Okay.
So it's a different kind of model. Okay, anybody? Yeah, Bill, you've got something? You're on mute there. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm next week I begin a 30-hour, 10-week-long solar class in conjunction with a solar farm they're going to install in Houston. We're training 15 adults, presumably to work on the farm, and I want to give them some skills beyond carrying panels around. And I just wondered whether Jay or anyone else might describe your experience having a solar class a little bit as to topics you dwell on and structure, whatever. I'm inclined to do the technical stuff. I think I plan to visit a solar farm this week and actually ask whether I can bring the 15 class members to the farm to get an idea of the various types of employment that the farms seek. They are really working at trying to find laborers. And anyway, could you tell me a little bit about your solar class?
Sure. Well, of course, we do kind of a general knowledge residential solar, which is a little bit different than what you're talking about, where our assumption is you're going to be the designer and the installer. So on a bigger project like that, you're probably not going to design it. You're just going to come in and work from somebody else's design. And it's usually the design parts that people trip over in my class. How do you size the array? How do you figure out voltage drop? How do you do your wire sizing, selection of components, things of that nature. We do the hands-on labs. A lot of times different students, of course, my experience here at Zane State, and I suspect Siggy, your group is similar. They're very hands-on focused. they hate being lectured to. So
Yeah, no, that's probably
so
true.
the stuff that you need to tell them, they don't want to hear. They just want to hook wires together and see if anything sparks. That's kind of what they like. But I would say that they tend to get real excited when you talk about the possibilities of it. The wonder of solar. The things that they've always thought were true that aren't true, like they're too expensive, that kind of thing. But that kind of has nothing to do with the installation end of it. If you're talking about just getting people installing, gosh, for a solar farm, that can be pretty dull. Carrying panels and sticking them on racks, that's probably mostly what they're going to be doing. So we talk about the various options a lot. What are the different components? How do you select the components? Try and walk through some designs where you can look things up and see the actual costs. Go into a wholesale distributor and start picking out components. Pick somebody in the classroom's house, design a system for their house, where you can go in on Google Earth, look at it, say, well, why would you put it on the roof? You just start asking them questions like you're doing a site assessment, where you say, do you want it on your roof? No, I don't want anybody up on my roof. That roof sucks. I got to replace it in 2 years. And they go, oh, well, that's one reason you wouldn't put it on the roof. That's a reason why you would put it on the ground if you've got ground mounted, and the different kinds of options, and why will that add more cost? So I think if you can make it real to them, as far as people invest in it, if it's their home up on the screen, as opposed to a theoretical thing.
Sure.
Yeah, somebody else mentioned about safety, and that's a big thing, especially with younger kids who think they're invincible. Talk about the different safety issues. All the different ways you can die. Those are always fun.
Yeah.
I don't know what else, Siggy. I don't want to just go with my experience on that, but I mean, Bill, we've got the curriculum. I'd be happy to share that with you if you haven't seen it already. So
No.
You did. You donated several books to Jernigan in Houston, and we're gonna use those.
okay, it's all right. So Siggy,
Yeah, I'm not a similar experience. I'm doing the same thing. I'm my focus is a little bit more on design, photovoltaic design, and as you said, like selecting the right components and sizing the system to the customer needs, and talking about standalone, bimodal, utility and active systems. So, but that's mostly in the classroom. So a lot of students don't have the patience for that and prefer to really, like you said, have some sparks and put some wires up and install panels. But here at the college, our installs are limited. I mean, I can do like maybe 2 or 3 different locations where I can have a few panels installed with a different inverter or microinverter. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
I found too, when you do a site visit and look at a system, after they've learned the different components and after they've, it's got to be late in the process, but it's kind of very helpful to go out there and say, oh, now what would you expect to see over here? And what do you think you're looking at over here? And then they can sort of follow the whole system from the panels to the disconnects to the connection point. And it starts to be real, at that point where you can.
I used to go every month to an install in the area. But COVID really put a block on that. I don't get anyone to invite me anymore at the moment.
Yeah, fortunately here at Zane State, where I am, there's a solar array up here on the roof where we can, go out and take a look at it and then follow the wires from the combiner box down to the, so we can just do it all right here and see it. But I know, Chris, you're doing some of those labs too. Do you have any advice there for Bill?
I think mostly from a safety standpoint too. I mean, that's the big thing. If you're having people haul panels around, safety is the big thing that we always push with anything like that too. I mean, we were up on one of the things on the college the other day, and we had to stay 3 feet away from, the side of the building and everything else, just because we were, we didn't want students falling off of it and whatnot. So if you're doing a rack mount, that's a little different than doing one that's on a building.
Mhm.
Yeah. I
Are
think,
there any, besides electrical safety for a ground mount, are there any precautions that need to be taken? Yeah,
I've had, when we were doing an install, somebody just sort of stood up and cracked their nose on the underside of one of the panels on the front. So just situational awareness, making sure you don't, walk into something, or if somebody's trenching and you don't want to step in the trench, or
do you require hard hats on a ground mount or any install?
yeah, typically,
Or-
but trying to keep people wearing them is tough. It's especially hard. Yeah, but even on a ground mounted system, we'll try and get everybody, especially those working underneath, because somebody's
Mhm.
always up above dropping wrenches or whatever. But
Yeah.
it's hard to get them to keep them on their heads. That's always tough. Carrying ladders around, making sure, because even a ground mounted, you need some step ladders and stuff, and don't want those walking into wires. And of course, when you got the panels out there, unless you're hooking up the modular electronic devices, if you're going to use a string inverter, which you probably will in one of those, you start connecting some of those panels together and you've got some significant electricity during daylight hours. So you're basically creating an arc welder, when you have those. So you got to be careful about that.
I was gonna have him step through making up some MC4 connections with a crimping tool and show him obviously which gender goes on which end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do that as a lab. I will caution you if you haven't done it yet, because I had this happen about 3 times. Those crimping tools, they tend to want to put the little barrel upside down in the crimping tool. If they do that, those things won't release until they're fully compressed. And if the barrel is turned upside down, it will break the teeth on your crimping tool, before it will release. And so I lost about 2 or 3, $40 crimping tools, like the very first time a student decided to mess with it. So you might want to be very cautious about pointing that out to them.
You're saying that you have a uncrimped connector that looks like this, and you put this into where it folds the leads over.
Yeah.
And that's the correct way. The wrong way is the opposite way. And
yeah, it's hard to anyway, they tend to have a little concave seat, and you want to put the bottom concave part of that in there, but it just feels like it could turn over and fit over top of that, and that's what the students want to do. You've got to really, really emphasize that. Otherwise, you'll just lose a bunch. And those teeth, I found it's cheaper to buy a new crimping tool than it is to get a replacement for those
okay.
teeth. So, yeah, but I'm cheap.
Have you all ever seen any of those? They're almost like a self for the ends. It's like all you do is put the wire in and I used to use a pump wrench, a channel locks, that you don't have to do the crimping anymore. It's all in one little plastic coating. You just put the wire in there,
Really?
tighten down on it. It does it all by itself. It made it easy, because I would always have trouble crimping all the ends. It was always a pain in the neck.
Is this for the MC4 connectors or other kind of connectors?
Is the MC4 just the regular one you put on panels?
Yeah.
Yep, that's it.
Huh, I've not seen that. Oftentimes what they'll do too is they'll sell them, with male and female already attached on each side, and you just cut it to length in the middle, so you're not actually making a connection when you're doing your jumpers. So for instance, let's say you need a 25-foot jumper, you're going to terminate using the bare wire, probably in a junction box or a combiner box. So you just cut it in the middle, and now you've got a male and female already terminated. So that's something in the field, but I think it's good to show them how to do the MC4 connectors. I should point out MC4 is a trade name, sort of like Kleenex or Xerox. It's not the true name of the connector itself. they've got some other term for it, but it's basically generically used like Kleenex. Even though it's a brand name, there are many different MC4-like connectors. And I have found not all of them work together. You know, when you try and use the barrel of one inside the other one, it won't work. And so when you start buying all of those little bits, you got to kind of make sure you keep them in their own little packages, because they like to go through a lot of them.
Any suggestions regarding wire management? That's usually the last thing you deal with, and you know, let me turn off my phone. Other than these clips that, you know, the wire clips into the PV wire. By the way, what is the name of the other type of photovoltaic? There's PV wire, and there's another generic name.
Yeah, you can use USE2. USE2 is
USE2. Okay.
Yeah, underground service entrance is what that stands for. And 2 just means more so. You know, it's like it's you know, it's considered in the NEC. They say you can use USE2 in exchange for PV wire. So I don't know now. Maybe Siggy, you would know. Used to be you could only get the PV wire in black, but now I see you can get it in red and black. But do any code officials require the red on the roof, you know, as for those jumper cables?
No, only if it's a grounded array. It needs to be, the grounded one needs to be gray, I believe. But other than that, no.
Yeah, white or gray. Yeah, you're not going to find any, you know, solidly grounded inverters anymore, though. Yeah.
Other than that, they can be both black, but they need to be labeled.
Yeah. Yeah, at the termination, they need to be labeled. But normally they say you've got to have the cover, you know, the insulation, the color, except that doesn't seem to apply to the PV source circuit on the roof. But the NEC doesn't make that as an exemption. I think it's just custom, I guess, because if you were putting red cables up there on your roof, it would show up, you know, it would look, it'd be like a red flag up on the roof. I think visually it would look kind of odd.
Yeah.
So anyway, but as you're saying with the bigger wires, I think it's 6 gauge and larger, you can just wrap tape around them near the termination to set the color code. But anything smaller than that has to be the color coded as appropriate. And what Siggy was mentioning about solidly grounded systems, if it is an old-fashioned solidly grounded inverter where the negative wire physically connects to the ground in the system and has its own DC ground, that requires, according to the NEC, it requires white or gray wire for that. So in a system like that, you would typically have black wire for the positive and white wire for the negative. But most systems today are going to be functionally grounded through the negative, because every new inverter has to have arc fault protection, ground fault protection, and all of that creates some sort of breaker in the system between the ground and the negative wiring system. So the NEC made this switch, I think it was in 2017. They specifically stated, okay, it's no longer solidly grounded. These things are functionally grounded through the negative. So since they're not solidly grounded, the NEC says any ungrounded wire must be red, black, or any other color. Well, so the positive, which was never grounded, is red, black, or any other color. The negative now must be red, black, or any other color. So that's not a whole lot of guidance, you know, because both wires have to be red, black, or any other color. So convention is positive is going to be red, negative is going to be black. That's convention, but it's not code for the DC side. So I don't know if that confused anybody or made any sense.
Probably.
Yeah. I mean, it was always confusing before because everybody wanted the negative to be black and the positive to be red, because that's the way automobiles and other things are. But some inspectors would come and say, nope, rip out all that black wire and replace it with white, because that's a solidly grounded system, and grounded conductors have to be white or gray. So I had a lot of reports of people in the field having to tear out all of the black wire and put in white wire. But then after 2017, then it was like, nope, black's fine. But you could put black for positive and red for negative, and it would be perfectly according to code, as long as you're consistent. Of course, the next guy is going to hate your guts, but you know, that's the way it works. So, all right. Any other questions there, or anything else for Bill? Okay, I thought I would mention, because one of my favorite topics, and it gets people excited in class, is about Perovskite. And Perovskite is like one of these technologies that we hear a lot about, but for some reason never comes to fruition. To my knowledge, there are very, very few, if any, commercially available Perovskite panels. They did say that they're manufacturing them, but I think they're very specialized. And so I was looking up, what's the problem? What's the thing with Perovskite? Because Perovskite is this technology for solar cells, and it is a thin film technology. So it is essentially two-dimensional. It's only a couple of atoms thick, but it can be sprayed on any surface. And so the technology is proven, and they find that, let's see, the other thing about it is it's very translucent, so you can have it for windows. It can be multicolored, so you could have it for advertising signs or whatever. So this is all the promise of it. They have found that it is as much as 25% efficient, I saw here. So when you see these things, they say it's as efficient as silicon, cheaper than silicon, translucent or clear. So all of those benefits, you start going, well, why isn't it out there in the marketplace if it's so great? You know, it's cheaper, it's as efficient, all of that. Well, apparently it also degrades very, very quickly. So it's not stable. So that's a problem. So stability has been an issue, although the articles were saying they seem to have been able to address that. But apparently it breaks down when exposed to moisture and oxygen, which will never be a problem in solar, you know, since we don't have to deal with oxygen or moisture. And there's also lead content in it, so it apparently leaches out lead. So stability and lead have been an issue, but also when you look into the efficiency, it is 25% efficient with cells that are only 1 inch in size. But as they get bigger, they get less efficient. So a 1 meter cell, the best they've been able to do is about 10% efficiency, which is not very good compared to silicon. So these are some of the reasons why silicon still accounts for about 95% of all the cells out there on the market, is that this is a very promising technology, but has significant technological barriers to try and overcome. They are coming up with some interesting applications for it, such as solar blinds, which is a product that somebody is out there marketing, where you can get perovskite in these window treatments that generate power, you know, when you shut them, because it is, they're typically manufactured by spraying these cells and then encasing them in a laminated plastic of some sort. So a solar blind would be something that would be perfect on there. But the new application that seems to be gaining some traction here is taking existing solar cells, silicon cells, and coating them with perovskite, which then increases the efficiency of these by up to almost 30% for the efficiency of these cells. So they're saying they're very close in this technology to getting them to where a combination silicon perovskite cell is actually cheaper per watt than a silicon cell by itself because of the increased efficiency. So I think we may start seeing it like we saw with PERC cells, you know, the PERCs, where they put a reflective coating on the bottom of the cell that kicks some of the photons back up into use. That's pretty much become an industry standard. Most panels now are going to be PERC panels. From our perspective in installation, it doesn't make any difference, but the cost per watt actually comes down when you incorporate PERC technology. And I think we may start to see silicon plus perovskite coming out in the same thing, where these panels just show up, you install them the same way, but they're more efficient and cheaper because they're basically, they have 2 layers of cells as opposed to 1. So any comments on perovskite?
So Jay, if they do the coating, what do? They put a coating out, then they put a lead on the edge of the top panel. I mean, when you say it's kind of a spray of the, you know, how do they make the connection there?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. It's got to be something like a multi-junction thin film cell. You know, those are out there, and where they have multiple layers of thin film, each of them are harvesting at a different bandwidth or a different wavelength. So obviously there's some way of connecting in with each of those bandwidths, whether it's the same lead and they're just simply connected to do 2 different layers in some way. I don't know.
Okay, just curious. Yeah.
Oh, how do you spell perovskite? I think it's Perovskite. I sometimes spell it YTE, but I think I'm wrong. But I remain, is it an I? Yeah.
I don't know, yeah.
I remain convinced that perovskite is the future of solar. You know, it uses so much less material. It is cheaper, it is more efficient. Once these technological barriers have been overcome, like a typical perovskite panel weighs about 20, it weighs 1/10 the weight of a silicon panel. So, you know, if you can work with materials that are that much lighter, then it's got to have some advantages. The disadvantage, of course, it's not going to be as robust. So are these things going to last 25 years? When you start making them paper thin, you know, that could be a big problem as well. So who knows?
And you said that they degrade quicker. Do they guarantee those for 25 years like a normal panel, or is it a lesser warranty?
Usually, like with thin film, they're only about a 10-year warranty. So I don't know. With perovskite, I would guess, you know, if they're not going to last as long, they're only going to warranty them. But who knows? I mean, the real projected use of these is for solar windows, you know, for advertising signs, anything that allows translucent, you know, light to go through. So I could see that as a big application for these. And solar blinds, another interesting thing. We may see solar with perovskite. Of course, you could incorporate it into anything that can receive a coat of paint could become a solar generating unit, like the paint of your car, the windshields of your car. If you've got electric vehicles, why not use the body to be recharging the batteries at any particular time? Why not use the parking areas of or the sides of buildings? Who knows? You know, billboards. Why not use the billboard itself to generate the power for the lighting of that billboard? Or, you know, lots of different applications. But they got to get the cost down and the reliability up. So, yeah, Bill, you had a question? You're muted.
Yeah, I ran across a new stationary battery called an iron air battery, and the talk is promising. And if you want to search for it, there's a guy that has a regular podcast, Just Have a Think, and he speaks about developments in the iron air battery technology. They may be a few years off, but it's promising. And, you know, batteries are everything these days.
Yeah.
So
That
Yeah.
guy's got a whole series of things. He's got like podcasts every couple weeks, I think, or every, all the time.
Okay. Speaking of podcasts, I'll throw in my bid. We've got the When the Biomass Hits the Wind Turbine podcast. So
You've been running reruns though.
I know I have. Well, we've had our summer hiatus. We're in fact
Yeah.
we're recording tomorrow. We're starting to.
Okay, well, I was wondering if you thought you were Lucille Ball now. You could just run reruns forever. We keep
I know.
watching.
No, we got up to 125 episodes, and then we sort of hit a dry spell. But we were hoping to go back into the studio because we've been recording remotely. But Ohio University is still shut down as far as outside guests. So, but we will record tomorrow, as a matter of fact. So
What's your
I think
topic?
one of them is going to be hippies versus hipsters. That was I don't know how much that has to do with sustainability, but it's been bugging me lately. So I just have a burr under my hair that hippies and hipsters are not the same thing, even though they wear the same outfits. So we're going to talk about that. So, and I'm not quite sure what the other one is, but anyway, and what was I going to mention? There was one other thing. Anyway, it seems to have left my mind here. Yeah, Siggy?
My own little project here. My roof is nearing its end of life. I'm starting researching cool roof options and building integrated products. And I was wondering if anyone has some experience with BIPV shingles. I looked up Certainty has their own product and GAF has a product. And then there are third-party vendors who have some products, but
I know I looked up some too.
information about yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I looked some up and it's such a specialized market. It doesn't seem to have really caught on much. When you're talking about cool roofs though, are you talking about just needing it to be white?
Yeah, I was thinking what Energy Star shingles or metal, but metal, I have an HOA, so that's another story. But at least I would like to get approved Energy Star rated shingles, which are typically lighter than what the community is proposing to install.
Yeah. And for those who don't understand, HOA is Homeowners Association.
Yeah.
Or Residential Gestapo.
Yes,
Exactly.
Tommies, they're not Gestapo. Yes.
So anyway, yeah, that's difficult because of course, light shingles are just a no-brainer.
Yeah.
So why they would restrict you on reflecting?
No, I think that will be approved. My roof would be probably the lightest color then, but that's okay. But I was thinking, that's the time where if you use solar shingles, any of those, then you can save some money on square footage and just get it done right away. I can do an east-west install on that's a large cable, so I can probably get easily 10, 12 kilowatt left, right. I mean, 6 and 6. So,
Yeah,
but
well, of course, Tesla is the one everybody talks about as far as shingles, but I don't think
I went
everybody
on
sees
Tesla
those.
and I put my address in and it was $90,000 and I thought that's not right.
Yeah,
So,
I don't know. I personally, I just don't like the idea of solar shingles.
yeah,
I think there's just way too many issues around them.
I just think about aesthetics, but I know I can just go with racking and all. I could get it much cheaper if I do racking, but I'm just researching it right now and I haven't found anything that is good
Mhm.
so far. If anyone finds something, let me know.
Okay. All right. Anybody else have anything? All right. Well, let's call it a day here and we'll meet
Okay.
back again next Tuesday at noon. Thanks everybody for joining. Take
All right.
care.
Everybody-
Bye-bye.
Yep. Bye.